And welcome, everybody, to another episode of First World Problematic. These intros have gotten a lot better since only I have started to do them. Today, we have a very, very exciting guest. You know, this guy, he is honestly one of the sweetest people that I've been able to meet recently. And he actually is like the Kevin Hart of the fourth most populous country in the world, Indonesia. So, everybody, please give it up for this guy who you told me you've recorded like 6 or 8 specials, right? Right, Pandji?
Right.
Wow, that's crazy. Everybody give it up for Pandji Pragiwaksono. Yeah.
Woo! Thank you, guys. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so nice to have you here.
Yeah,
Pandji.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Pandji, where are you living right now? Where are you right now?
I'm in
Queens.
my Flushing, Queens. I live in Auburndale with my 2 kids and my wife.
So how was it moving from an Indonesian castle to Flushing, Queens? How have the children dealt with this downgrade?
You know what's funny?
Is it weird
You
that
know what's funny though?
Is it
No,
weird that
because-
Sorry.
No, sorry. It's what's funny is, although it's so the house I live in Jakarta is actually smaller than the one I'm living right now in Queens. It's crazy because a property is also very, very expensive in Jakarta, especially when you're living in central Jakarta.
Okay.
Most of people in Jakarta, they live like on the outskirt of Jakarta because it's cheaper there. And it's very dense. The city is very dense, and so houses aren't very big. So it's funny how I told my family, when we moved to Queens, or we moved to New York, it's not going to be a bigger house. It probably is going to be a small apartment. But then me and my wife, we were worried about school. And so eventually I had to pay more than the budget that I have so that my kids would have better school. And so now it's a little bit of a struggle being a comic in New York with not making any money with this rent. So but it's been great.
Don't worry, you get paid $1,000 for this recording. So.
I've never heard of somebody moving to New York and upsizing. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Does it feel weird that for your kids that they moved from Indonesia to Flushing, Queens, and now they're in the only place that has more Asian people than Indonesia?
Well, I must say that to them, it doesn't feel like what they would expect living in New York.
Really?
Because we had this conversation. So the idea of moving, we already had this conversation for years before. I had to negotiate with my kids in order for them to want to be a part of this thing. And so everybody thought that we'd be living amongst white people. That's what we thought. Because even for my kids moving to New York, we thought it would be like moving to Manhattan.
Yeah. Don't tell me
that's
what convinced them, Pandji. Don't tell me that's what convinced them. Come on.
Yeah, but it's really funny when everywhere around us is actually Asian. Our neighbors are Asian. Most kids in school are Asian. A lot of Asian restaurants around here, so it's really funny. But it's interesting. It's not what we expected it to be.
Yeah, Pandji, for me and the rest of the people listening who need some backfill on your story. So what was your deal like in Indonesia, and then what prompted the move over here? What's been going on?
Yeah, so I've been doing stand-up since 2010, and back then there were no stand-up comedians. There's actually one stand-up comedian.
In Indonesia, you mean? Not just...
In Indonesia, prior to that. Because it's not really a thing. And then I started doing stand-up 2010.
How do you start doing it when there's no stand-up? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's my question.
So I used to rap. I have 4 rap albums.
What?
And
this guy's a multi-hyphenate. I love
it. And but being a stand-up comic has always been in my mind because the first stand-up comedy show I watched was through a pirated DVD. I saw Robin Williams live in Broadway.
Oh, nice.
And then when I watched that for the first time, I thought, whoa, this is exactly what I usually do, but in front of the class, in front of the people in my office. I'm like, I like doing this. Oh, what is this? This is stand-up comedy, but nobody's doing stand-up in Indonesia. So it's just, I kept that in my head. And then I started doing rapping, and then I released albums. And then I did like a mini concert in front of 80 to 100 people.
Oh.
But the idea of doing stand-up still in my head. So I thought, let me just try to do a 5-minute set in the middle of my rap performance. And then it killed, and I was like, all right, let me do 15-minute next time. And then it killed, and I was like, let me do 30-minute next time. And then
Wow.
And then I thought maybe I should be doing this, but nobody's paying comics at that time because it's not really a profession. And so every time there's do you know that Indonesia is also famous with their natural disaster? There's always like earthquakes or volcanoes and stuff. And there's
Well, you guys are on
like,
archipelago of islands. It's hard. Avoid the water and the volcanoes and all.
There's always like a what do you call an event where everybody
fundraising?
Fundraising. There's always a
How
fundraising.
did you get that from event?
I knew exactly what he was talking about.
I had no idea.
When he said earthquakes, there was like telephone calling events. Yeah
Exactly.
Telethon.
So there's always
oh my god, Pandji was playing the telethon. If you want to hear the rest of this joke, please send money to
But so on those fundraising events, I offered myself to do stand-up. They called me to perform rap. I was like, can I do stand-up instead? And then they let me do stand-up, and it became a thing. And now it's a huge thing in Indonesia, stand-up comedy. And I've been doing, I did 9 stand-up comedy specials starting 2011. And so
that's very prolific. That's one a year?
Almost one a year, yeah.
Nice.
But it's also because I really, really love doing stand-up.
Of course.
And I would rather, I thought to myself, how, I want to do as much stand-up as I can. And so I decided to just write every day. So I have new materials every year. And so I can put out specials every year. And so I can tour every year.
That's great.
So that's the way I think. And then I reached to a point where it became sort of like repetitive. And then I saw Andrew Schultz 441 on YouTube. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is the next step. And I've been working towards that ever since. In 2022, I moved to New York.
That's great.
Wow. And so you were doing stand-up in like, I guess, what's the language in Indonesia? Like
Indonesian. Bahasa Indonesia.
Bahasa,
So you had to switch languages and start writing in English now.
And the thing with his English stuff, well, maybe I saw him a year into his English stuff, is it was great. It translated very well. Did you find any difficulty with that? Because your English is excellent, so maybe you didn't find difficulty.
Oh well, it's because it's not only about switching languages, but it's also about reference. Because I need to live here to understand the reference. That's true. Because some certain things are different. The way you perceive things are different when you live in Indonesia and live in New York. And like I have to understand the reference, the zeitgeist, so to say, of New Yorkers. And of all the bits that I have in English, probably only 5% of them are my Indonesian bit that I translated to English.
Wow.
Yeah, every other else is something that I have to develop. But because I do open mics almost every day, and sometimes twice a day, maybe sometimes 3 times a day, I think I'm getting better at developing those English jokes.
Wow. So you went from performing, like doing a full special for what, like 5,000 to 7,000 people, to going back to open mics. Like, do you have Stockholm syndrome or something?
I already, do you know what? A lot of people ask me about this, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm really, really enjoying it. I really love doing this. I really love being anonymous. There is joy in animosity. There's joy being somewhere nobody knows you, because back in Indonesia, if because I'm already known, I have a career, and being stand-up comic, the more people know you, the more people hate you as well,
Of
because
course.
they hate the way you
Nobody
think
knows me
and
and they
what you
all hate
say.
me already. So good for you.
And I was at that point in my career in Indonesia where I would start thinking, are they laughing because I'm funny, or are they laughing because it's me talking?
Yeah.
On the flip side, do they hate my joke because it's not funny, or do they hate me
Mm.
and thus they're not laughing? And so moving to New York is very fun. It's very interesting because if I kill, it's because it's funny, and if I didn't kill, it's because the joke isn't good. So the art over the person. That's what I'm trying to say
That's
here in New York.
Yeah,
so
so the
interesting.
only difference between Panji and us is the people who come to see him is like Miss Indonesia. And the people who come to see us
For
are
context,
yeah.
you're doing this show,
Show
Mike. Somewhere in between. With
apostrophe there.
Panji at
Mhm.
the producers club, and Miss Indonesia came.
Did she
Um,
really?
wait,
Yeah.
yeah, she
Yeah.
actually did. She did. And her mother came. Anyways, Panji, what I was gonna ask you was, you told us your kind of rap beginning. How did you gain a following in stand-up comedy if you just started doing it like during your rap sets and everything? Would you get it from TV or from the specials eventually?
Yeah. So before doing rap, I also do. I'm a TV presenter. I'm a TV host,
Ah,
and I host, quiz and talk shows and stuff. And so I do have. I already established a career in Indonesia entertainment industry, and then I start doing rap. And so
okay.
I do have people know me from those previous gig, and then eventually they become my audience doing stand up, but not
That's
a lot,
great.
not all of them. Some people hate my jokes, and
Of course.
yeah, till today some people would just come up to me, I wish you still do rap because I like you then, because the way you say it, because the jokes that I do in Indonesia is sometimes it's social commentary, and
Of course.
sometimes it's political, and those are always, it divides people.
Yeah.
But I do what I want to do, so
That's
yeah, that
great.
happens
Do you
Makes
feel
sometimes.
like
sense.
you were able to get better faster because you were already performing to like big audiences? Like you said, you started out in a rap crowd, you did the 5 minutes, then you went to 15 minutes
Yeah,
and 30
well,
minutes super quickly, right? So like, yeah.
yeah, it's funny because I think when I go to open mics and I watch comics, I have a sense that some of these people are new performing, um, and I realized quickly that my problem is strictly about jokes, not
It's about
about
the writing.
miking, and then my work ethics. There are
Mm,
stuff that you need to establish in order to become a stand-up comic,
of
not just
course.
about writing jokes, but it's also how you look at the audience, how you brought yourself up on stage, your stage presence. And I don't have that because I do have experience performing
Of
previously,
course.
and so I know that I my main focus has to be on the joke writings, and that's my biggest challenge. And as much joke as I've written, I'm really I hate the fact that I think I only have a 20-minute solid up until today.
In
After
English?
a year being here, yeah, I only have 20 minutes solid. 20 minutes that I can use like everywhere. And that bums me out because I should have developed more. But it's hard. It's hard for me.
And also, I don't think that it's linear, that creation of material. At least it's not for me. It
Mm.
it was, oh my god, it would take forever to create 10 minutes, and now I feel like I can create a lot more minutes in the same time it used to take me to make 10 minutes.
Mm.
So I'm sure that that'll ramp
Makes
up for
sense.
you too as well. Like the more,
Yeah.
like you said, in tune you get with the New York zeitgeist and everything.
Hmm.
Um Especially because you could probably use not the exact premises you use in Indonesia, but you could do social commentary here, I'm sure, and people would love that.
Yeah, but I tried to do that. I remember I tried to do something topical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't really connect the people. I was
What was the
thinking,
joke?
was it? Oh, it was about. I remember it was about Kobe and also
What? They didn't take to
Kobe.
Kobe jokes last year?
yeah, about Kobe having. Do you know that they have the Kobe statue
Outside Staples
on
Center?
the crash landing
Oh,
site?
shit.
Yeah, they made a statue about it. And also I talked about the Russian and the Ukraine war. I try to talk about Biden in my sets, but it didn't really connect. And at first I thought maybe it's not as strong of a joke,
Mm.
but then I remember at one time, I don't remember where it was, but I remember it was one of those open mic that has feedbacks at the end. Do you know this?
Mhm,
Oh,
mhm.
yeah.
And some one of them was like, when you he said, when you talk about Indonesia, it's more interesting to us because when you talk about something topical, everybody else is doing
Yeah.
it. And so I was like, maybe that makes sense. And then I've been asking people, and then they kept saying that, yeah, your Indonesian makes. Here's the thing that I realized: the Indonesian jokes make them pay attention, but it takes another effort to make them relate. So I have two obstacles to jump over. I have to make them connect with me, which happens every time I speak about Indonesia. But to make them stay and want to listen to it more, I have to find a way to relate to people watching here in New York, and that's a whole different thing.
I mean, that's almost like
Yeah,
why you're living in New York, and you're like, because the premise is like Indonesia, and then the punchline is just the stuff that you're filling out by learning more about New York and stuff. And I'm sure if you wanted to make it topical, you just find a way to like make Kobe a punchline or something. I'm sure there's a funny way to do that that doesn't piss people off,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. I'm still trying though.
yeah,
And also 20 minutes in a year in a completely new country, very new culture. It's a
Solid.
really
Yeah.
good it's very solid progress, I would
yeah,
say.
it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also like going back to that point, about like people starting out and people moving on. I think I remember so I used to do stand up in LA, and one of my things got really popular. I had created this thing called an open mic bingo. And like if somebody set, like, you did not reach the bingo because they had enough new topics, then they were ready to do a show, and there were all these topics like airlines, airplane food, Tinder dates, why I'm single, dick jokes. And if they didn't hit that bingo, then like they're good to go. And I feel like, Panji, I've seen your set enough times and you'll never hit even the bin of the
Right.
bingo, like especially the Indonesian stuff.
Right.
It's extremely interesting. I mean, I would love to only thing I know about Indonesia, like even having lived in India, is the Bali. Everybody wants to go there, visa on arrival for Indians. We're there all the time.
Serbia, I
Yeah.
think Wyatt could sue you for plagiarizing his set right now.
What joke of mine is that?
Airlines dating. No, I'm kidding. I was just giving you shit.
Do I have any
You don't have an airline
Maybe.
joke, as far as I know.
He does have an airline joke
Really?
about his parents when he was a kid feeding him.
Oh, that's a stupid one-liner. That's a
I
one-liner.
love
It's
that
not in my
one.
act.
Yeah, it's not in his act, but it's a really funny one-liner on Wyatt's TikTok. But no, okay. Also, Panji, have you seen the show called Big in France? Huge in France?
I know. Got El Male.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that. That's funny. I love it. I kind of relate to it a bit.
You are
But
like one of the only dudes that relates to that show. Watching that. Isn't that crazy? Like,
Not a very relatable show, Panji.
no, it's not.
Sorry, man.
It's
But,
such
I
specific
stopped-
circumstances. And
yeah, I stopped watching it because I was watching podcasts, listening to podcasts rather, and then I found out that God actually stole Seinfeld's bit when he was still in France. A lot of them, and they made some. And then I started digging in. Someone made a comparison between God's joke and Seinfeld's joke, which is spot on, but on with a different language. Which is,
I've
I was
heard
like,
a lot
oh.
of that. I've heard of that. Yeah.
Wait,
Yeah, but the funny thing is, they're friends now. God and Seinfeld. God is on Jerry's comedians in cars getting coffee.
Wow.
He's on it.
Nice.
Yeah,
so that's all we have to do to get on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, is that change some Jerry Seinfeld material in Hindi, and
Yeah.
No wonder
Bahasa, and we're good to go.
Serbi always tells me, she's like, my act would be better in Hindi. That's why she's gonna, gets her choice of any English material.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So Pandji, do you still like do rap and stuff? Like, what happened to that, dude?
Oh, well, what happened to that is the money is in stand-up in
What?
Indonesia. So I stopped doing it.
Really?
So yeah, in Indonesia. The trajectory of my career as a stand-up comic and the trajectory of my career as a rapper, it's incomparable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because in 2011 the stand-up comedy scene blew out. It became huge it became huge. It became popular because for the first time there was a TV station with a it's like a Last Comic Standing but Indonesian version of it.
Mhm.
And then it became a big thing. And because I was doing stand up a year before, uh, I became like the host and then the jury of the competition.
Wow.
And then and so my career doing stand up has been great, and not the same with my rap. And then I kind of left it behind. But every time the people who love me doing rap ask me, "Are you still doing rap?" I said, "Well, I'm still looking for beats and I'm still writing, but I'm just waiting for the right one,
Yeah.
But in actuality, I kind of put that on hold and focusing more on doing stand up.
Got
I
it.
think the Indonesian and Indian like trajectory of comedy going popular were like a very similar timeline. Had an Indian version of Last Man Standing. I don't know if you know Kanis Surka. She was also similar to you in India, and she just moved to New York and is doing the same thing. The circuit, trying to get acclimatized. But like in India, had done like 5 Amazon Prime specials and had like 2 TV shows where she was judging other comics. And so like
Wow.
in that note, like what advice do you have of people wanting to make that transition and wanting to come to New York, LA, and trying to enter the American scene after making it big in their hometowns? What are like the 3 people who want to do
Her
that?
hometown of India. Yeah.
I guess the first thing is you have to let go ego when you move from a country where you have a prominent career to New York. You have to let go of that, because sometimes anybody who says doing stand up because he likes doing stand up or she likes doing stand up eventually will feel the comfort of having money, having nice cars and a nice house, and people being nice to you all the time. You always have table in restaurants. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
But then when you move to New York, none of that exists. Nobody knows you, and then you just have to let go. Because I do have friends saying that they want to move to New York, but after watching what happened to me, they saw me bark on the sidewalk, and they'd be like, "I can't do that, man. I don't want to do that." Because in Indonesia, when you have a career in the US, people expect you to have like a glamorous lifestyle or something, like you're a superstar because you're in the US, when it's not really that. And when they saw me, and it did happen, when the clip of me barking circulated in Indonesian social media, people are talking like, "Oh, I'm so sorry for Pandji. He fell off. What happened to his career?" And and I'm like, well, this is the grind. This is what I like to do. It doesn't matter what other people think. But the most important thing for people who want to do this is to just let go of ego, because it'll get in the way.
Yeah.
It'll stresses you out when you don't have to be stressed about it.
As someone who has no clout or success at all, I still struggle with getting rid of my ego, dude. So it's nice to see like you do that. Do you have any thoughts on how you practice that, or like how you actually manage to do that? Because it's difficult.
Well, I guess because I don't remember how much YouTube content and how much podcast I consumed, where it was just, I watch Rogan only when he has fellow comics on it,
No need to justify Pandji.
No, because every time there's another comic, they always talk about how they start doing it. and it's always interesting to me. And every time I consume it, I always feel like, oh, I want to I want to do that as well. If this is what it takes, I want to do that. I remember Andrew Schultz has this video where he and a couple of his buddies came back to the comedy club that they used to go to, where they used to bark and stuff. And I was like, okay, if this is what needs to be done, I wanna try to do this too.
That's great. And you know what I find so very nice about you, Pandji, is like you said, you are very unpretentious. You know, I see you there at the mics, like laughing, you know, introducing yourself to everyone. A lot of the people in the scene, like even if they don't have, you know, a former career or a current career in Indonesia like you did, like they will be very like, oh, I don't want to talk to the newer comics, or like I can't laugh at that joke. You know what I mean? I really appreciate that. And even the fact that you were out there barking is, you could potentially leverage, you know, your career to hopefully jump over that barking stage. But the fact that you want to commit to that grind is very nice. You know, you're like, I can leverage it and I can bark, you know, and if I'm not going to have an ego, then that's going to get me farther than just doing one of the things.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you. But it's also because people have always said that you don't have to bark, right? You don't have to. You can just come up to a comedy club, show them how many followers you have, show them how many subscribers you have. But I always tell them it might get me the opportunity, but I still have to kill.
Yeah.
And it all comes down with the jokes. So I really, why would I want to get the opportunity to do sets at a comedy club when I'm not ready joke wise?
Yeah.
And so let me just doing what it needs to be done. Just focus on the grind, focus on writing the joke, and just it'll eventually happen. If I'm good enough, it's going to happen. And so yeah, I'm just doing it. But it's easier for me to say because I'm saying this because a fellow comic told me, yeah, but you can do this because you already have money. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of true because I do have money from doing YouTube and stuff. But I still feel like it's the right path to go, to just try to grind it from bottom up, you know.
That's a great way to put it. So Pandji, what's the end game? What's the dream?
Yeah,
now?
that's a good question. Do your kids want to live here for the rest of their life, or they want to move back to Jakarta? I imagine they want to move back.
Yeah, they don't want to be here.
Yeah.
No, this is my biggest concern. This is my biggest concern because if you ask me what's the end goal, this is it. The dream is to be a New York comic. The dream isn't to have a Netflix special or to perform in Madison Square Garden. The dream is to wake up and tell myself, yo, you're a New York comic now.
Yeah. To wake up yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
I was like, you know, I don't care if I'm the small fish in the big pond. Like I want to be in the place where it's most competitive and the best comedians are. So I really understand that.
Yeah, and also because there's a little bit of I guess the word to use it is ego. There's a little bit of an ego being an Indonesian in Southeast Asia. And then looking at how Ronnie Chang from Malaysia is thriving, Joe Coy from Philippines is thriving, because back in Indonesia, Indonesians think that in Southeast Asia, we're the biggest and the best. Yeah. Indonesians think that way. Whereas when we arrived to New York, we realized nobody even ever heard of Indonesia in New York, right? And so I think Ronnie Chang becomes successful because most probably there are other Malaysian comics before him. You know, like Joe Coy being from the Philippines, you know, he has a successful career because he has someone else before that.
Yes.
And so I think one of my responsibilities is just to be the first. And so others will come and maybe other Indonesian comic will, you know, perform in Madison Square Garden one day and I'll be watching this person maybe. But as for now, the dream is just to be an Indonesian comic living in New York. So I'm already living it. And it's going to always be the journey over the destination. But what worries me, I have to say, is my kids and my wife. Yeah. If they say after, say, 3 to 5 years, we don't want to be here anymore, we want to go home, I don't know what to do. If I go back to Indonesia with them, I'm not doing what I wanted to do, which is to develop a career in New York. But if I forced them to stay with me, I wouldn't be a good husband and I wouldn't be a good father. If we distant and they go home and I stay, I would probably be depressed because I'm far away from my family because, I don't know what to do. That is my biggest fear right now.
Yeah.
That is terrifying. I'm not even close to that impasse. Terrifying when you said it like that.
I'm curious,
Yeah.
like, what
Yeah.
do they not like about it here specifically? I'm sure the kids miss their friends and stuff.
They're not
but-
from here, man.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
It's
Like
both.
I used
Yeah.
to I used to live in Los Angeles, and then my family moved to San Francisco when I was 10. That's not even a far move. Not even a far move, and I hated it. Just because I was a kid and my friends were there, and everything I knew was there. So I get. How old are they, Pandji?
My son is 15. He's going to be 16 this year. My daughter is 11. It's going to be 12 this year. And so they're
Aw.
teenagers basically.
Yeah.
And you know how teenagers are. They group together. Their
Yeah.
friends are just like in a group. And so it's been hard. Their friends are back home.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they are, it's different. When I'm about their age, America is everything, right? When I was a kid, when I'm a teenager, America is everything. Everything, music, movies, everything is the United States. Now it's different. Everything is either Korean or Japanese. And so there's
Wow.
nothing here in the United States that is interesting to them,
Yeah.
When I go to New York, I'm like, let's watch Broadway, watch the Knicks, or watch Seinfeld somewhere, right? It's the culture that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
But these kids, when they're after New York, I ask, so we're in New York now. Where do you want to go? Nowhere.
And they're like, Dad, we
So-
want tickets to the Blackpink concert. And you're like, that shit sold out in 3 minutes. They're doing one
So-
show.
So it's been hard, not only because everything they know is back home,
Mhm.
but it's also nothing here is interesting to them. So, but I keep trying to tell them, give it some time. What I think, everything that the United States have, we have it, but it's different on a different kind of scale.
Okay.
Like if you want to do animation, we can do that in Indonesia, but it's different here in the US because the sky is the limit here.
Yeah.
That's what I've been trying to tell them, and well, we'll see what happens after 3 to 5 years.
That is an interesting point, though. It does feel like kind of maybe like the tail end of like the U.S. like dominance over everything, and so I don't know if
it's beautiful.
that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah. I think it's, but this country is known to be resilient, so it's gonna bounce back as a country. But the trajectory right now, if we say, is America the center of pop culture, it is slowly moving towards another direction right now. The influence that the United States have, geopolitically, is also not the same.
Yeah.
And COVID has exposed that. They know now China and India and other countries are more, having the grasp of things.
Of course. I mean, that sort of globalization just makes me so happy, frankly. Even though I was born and raised here, it makes me very happy when I see that,
Yeah.
I like I'm a basketball nerd, and it sounds like you are because you're talking about the Knicks. I don't know if you're into basketball, but just the fact that we have so many amazing non-American players, like and now we're seeing like amazing non-American stand-ups. Just as a stand-up fan, just makes me so happy, because I'm like, stand-up's gonna get better than it ever has been. It's great.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. More colors.
And it opens
more
up my
personality.
if I get big, I could tour more places, right?
Exactly.
Great thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy it as well. I think my only thing is like it makes me sad when I can't understand stuff. And to your point about references, it's the language. I love seeing like Indian stand-ups from India when they perform in English, and I'm like, this is so funny, it's really good. But then they like throw in some Hindi, and I'm like, all right, I'm lost. So I don't know. I hope like the globalization, we still are able to understand what's going on because I would like to know what people in these countries are thinking.
Well, the thing is, most people from other countries have always watched English, American stuff with English subtitles. So, we should get used to doing that as well. And it wasn't that they originally knew the American context. They picked it up from all the media that they watched,
Yeah,
which is
you're
going to
right.
be what we have to do as well, and that's the only fair thing to do.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I
And to
learned
really
English.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned English watching Friends. You know, a lot of the references I didn't understand, and like now moving to New York and rewatching it, it's like
Right. And through Friends,
Okay.
you learn that
Yeah.
there were no black people in New York, just all the black.
Also, you know what's funny? A lot of people ask me, "Yo, your English is good. Did you learn that? Were you born in the United States?" And I always say the same thing. I watched Bad Boys 15 times. That's where I learned. That's where I learned my English.
No wonder he was a rapper.
Yeah.
Okay. To be inspired by
Yeah.
Black Americans like that is, I think, something that people all over the world can really,
Very
relate
true.
to.
Yeah, especially.
Like,
yeah.
it's hard when you see these American celebrities and they get in trouble for using like a black accent, like for example Aquafina, because I know that me
Mhm.
myself, I've been inspired by like so many black comedians,
Yeah.
so many black comedians I've watched, and I know that because of that, my comedy can be 30% inspired by that, and also white and also Asian, but it's hard. It's hard
Yeah.
to say you have no influence from that,
Yeah. It's true.
It's good to
very
be
true.
influenced for sure. Yeah, just
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
I certainly
Yeah.
think so. As long as you give credit
yeah,
to who came before you and you're like, listen, and I'm not trying to steal this from them, I'm just inspired by them. I think that's the way to do it in
Totally.
art. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
It's very
Pandji,
true.
I noticed that you have been performing in Bahasa as well. So how has that been in New York? That reception?
Yeah, it's funny. I want to tell a little bit of a story to set it
please
up
do.
to set up the answer to that. So I remember the Indonesian student here in New York asked me to join them playing pickup basketball. Right.
Ooh.
So these are college kids, and then I played with them, and then there's this guy. I think he's maybe 20, maybe 19. And then he sat next to me and was like, "What's your name?" That question from an Indonesian kind of struck me because, yo, you don't know me? I'm Panji.
That's awesome.
I'm huge. I was like, oh, maybe he wasn't paying attention. I'm like, oh, my name is Panji. And then he said, oh, so what do you do? I'm like, oh, I do stand up. Oh, cool. What do you do back in Indonesia? I was like, I do stand up. And his other friends, yo, you don't know who Panji is? And then I was like, oh, and then he said he was born, he's Indonesian, but he's born in, I think he said he lived in Philly or something. And so he has no idea who I am. Now, there's a lot of Indonesian who are like that here in New York. There are thousands of Indonesian, and like maybe half of them are married to someone else, and then they have kids. And then I realize I have a lot of Indonesian market that I need to tap into here in New York. And it's funny how even though you were born in the US and you know nothing about Indonesia, they still have this need to reach out to Indonesian culture. And so they've been showing up to my Bahasa Indonesian show.
That's great.
I have this regular show at an Indonesian restaurant. It's called Awang Kitchen. It's probably the biggest Indonesian restaurant in New York.
Where is it?
It's in Grand Avenue, Elmhurst,
I'm gonna go.
Queens.
I'm going.
Yeah, I'm gonna have another one on the 16th of February.
Okay.
It's gonna. I think it's on Valentine's.
Do you have any other
celebration or
comics
something.
that are able to perform? Like,
No, just me.
okay.
Just me. It's basically just
Difficult.
me. Yeah. The Mr. Awang, the person who owns Awang Kitchen, asked me to do that show. At first, I thought I was doing him a favor, so that he has content on his restaurant. But then I realized, oh, I kind of need this as well. I need to develop a relationship with my Indonesian people here in New York. So it's been great. It's only 30 to 40 people every month, but every month is always new people
Yeah.
to get to know. And so it's been fun. And it's also fun where you can stand up without having to think about grammars and stuff. So it's fun.
No, that must be so awesome.
That's great. And to your point about like like connecting to the culture and not knowing as much, like I have to say, I think Panji, you probably know, like, are connected more to Indian, like media and culture than either Vishal and Wyatt.
That's probably true.
Yeah, and it's not like because that they haven't tried, or they just haven't had access to it in a way that we in the East have.
Oh,
And
really?
like, yeah, like growing up, but even in Indonesia, like
I mean,
Bollywood
Vishal,
has.
you would never see Shah Rukh Khan's movies in the movie theater here.
But
You
it
know
was
what I
like that in
mean?
Indonesia, Panji?
I imagine so. Yes or
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's an interesting point. Is like they and the both of them, are like connected to and want to connect more to their Indian heritage. So I totally see that, in the Indonesian context as well, that like urge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting. I remember on Sammy Obeid show, remember that one?
Yeah.
After the show, somebody come up to me, "Hey, my mom is Indonesian, but I'm born here in the US. It's so good to finally see someone from Indonesia doing stand up, having a career in New York." I was like, "Oh, thank you very much." So things like that makes me very,
That's
very
so awesome.
happy.
Yeah.
And
Guess who that was?
keep
Why, Vishal? That was Alicia. Alicia's mom is Indonesian.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Very cool.
Who is
Yeah.
Alicia?
Yeah.
A
Our
mutual
friend Alicia, you met her. She's Shweta's friend.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I know who you're talking about. Yes.
she had a nanny, I think, or a maid who's also Indonesian. And so her mom and the maid speaks Indonesian all the time. And so she kind of picks it up by listening to it. It's interesting. It's very fun.
She can only talk about, cleaning and stuff like that and homemaking, but it's okay.
And she knows all the Indonesian insults,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Every Bahasa
And she knows
insult
how to
knows.
haggle pay. That's about it. That's like when I don't know any Hindi, frankly, but my mom taught me, the numbers 1 through 10, hello, goodbye, and then I picked up like vagina and all these others from Serbi. So,
Panji, going back to rap real quick, dude. Do you
Mhm.
do you ever freestyle rap? Can we do some freestyling right now?
You know what? Back in Indonesia, I don't even do freestyle in Bahasa Indonesia. So I'm not going to try to attempt to do freestyle in English.
Dude, I'll give you a beat.
But I still have my workout on, like Apple Music, Spotify, and some of them are in English. But the last time I performed doing rap was 2012, and so I don't even remember my own song. I was interviewed at a radio station back in Indonesia, because I was doing a tour. I was doing tour in Indonesia last year in August, and then one of the radio station like, "Hey, can you do us a little bit of verse from your song?" I was like, "Oh, cool. Damn, I don't remember any of my lyrics now because it's been so long."
wow.
This is like
Yeah.
how when Miley Cyrus forgot the lyrics to the national anthem.
And and you know what? All of my rapper friends in Indonesia, they hate the shit out of me because I'm in New York. It's the birthplace of hip hop,
Yeah.
but I haven't been going places like it's I think this year's the 50th anniversary of hip hop.
Wow.
Hip hop was born 50 years ago in the Bronx, and people are like, "Have you been to the Bronx? To the there's this apartment where the first ever hip hop party occur," and I was like, "Yeah, I haven't. Man, fuck you. If I was in New York, I'll be going places. Yeah, but I'm doing stand up here, so sorry."
Damn.
And
And I
I
haven't
also
been
want
to
to
the
ask
Bronx.
someone who has done both this. I mean, I know you said you don't really have too much experience freestyling even in Indonesia, but I always want to know how similar freestyling is to like riffing about a topic you had never riffed about.
It's interesting. It's kind of similar, but in hip hop it has to rhyme, and in stand up it has to be funny.
Yeah,
And to me, instinctively, it's easier to find a way to make that funny
that's true.
instead of finding a way to make it rhyme. And also in hip hop, rhyming is one thing, but flow and delivery is another thing. And Whereas in stand up, I don't think it's too much of a problem to not have a style or to not have a certain flow. And so to me, I think rap is harder to do because instinctively I've always been funny as a kid. That's why it's more like, to me it's more like I met hip hop before I met stand up. When
Mhm.
when in actuality I feel like I'm born to do stand up more than I was born to do rap, if it makes sense.
Total.
That makes sense.
Do you feel like the stuff that you learn in rap though is fed into your stand up, like the things with like flow and delivery
Sure.
that's like helped out?
Yes, but it to me the thing that helps me the most is how to have a presence on stage.
Yeah.
Hip hop helps me
That's great.
to do that, and how to connect with the audience. But uh, above all that, I learned how to market my stand up from how I did marketing for my rap career. And so
Mm.
a lot of people realize that too. And I was like, what you did in stand up, you did that before, when you were promoting your album, right? I was like, yeah, because it's almost like a laboratory. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
almost like a laboratory in marketing, and I try to apply that in stand up. And so a lot of influence from me having a career in rap
I would love to
towards
hear
my
about
stand up.
like the actual marketing strategies that you use, but before that, I want to say that I actually feel the opposite as you. When I was a
Oh.
child, I was always very unfunny. I would say I was not funny at all, but I always wanted to be a comedian. So for me, I had spent a long time learning to write jokes, and then once I started performing stand up, I was like, oh my god, I'm such a bad performer. Like I'm so much better of a writer than a performer. You know.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But anyways,
Yeah.
marketing. What kind of marketing technique? Like anything very novel that nobody else is doing?
No, I think it's just that because a lot of people realize in hip hop or in doing stand up, a lot of people seem to think that they always need a third party to help them connect with their audience.
Mm,
Like in hip hop, they always think their label is in charge of doing that.
yeah.
That's why a lot of rappers are not involved in community building, are not really connected with their audience because they thought that's the job description of a label or a recording
And
company.
it is of a distributor, but you got to do it yourself too,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. And if you are not involved in doing that in the era of internet where the middleman is, you don't really need that. Sometimes you get disconnected between you and your audience. And so what I did is basically just imagine if there's no third parties, there's no middleman, and community building, and doing your grind by yourself. There's something that I did in rap. I learned in rap, and I applied it to stand up. Is you have to help your audience. Um, I'm trying to find a way to say this. So in entertainment, sometimes when you're accustomed to watching freebies like on YouTube
Mm,
or whatever, there's a huge gap between getting used to consume content free and then paying for tickets. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's a huge gap, and so you have to help your audience to bridge the gap by regularly selling things that are not on the same price range with your ticket. You know what I'm saying? You
Okay.
understand?
Yeah.
Like
Interesting.
selling small things like merch, maybe stickers, small stuff, so that your fans are accustomed to spending stuff before you ask them to spend so much money on tickets.
I
Ah.
never
You know,
thought of that. That's a very nice. Huh.
because you
That's
have
a
to
good way
help
to put
them.
it. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, that's just one of the things. There's some other things, but it's a bit too technical. But bottom line is, you have to always remember that you have to help them to be able to consume you.
Hmm.
The
Wow.
entertainer needs to remember that we need to help. Like a lot of comics in Indonesia, when they promote their show, they do it like 3 days before, a week before.
Yeah.
In Indonesia, I keep telling comics, you have to help them prepare the money for your tickets. If you tell them, if your ticket is somewhat expensive, you have to help them save money from their paycheck like 3 months ahead. You have to help them do that, because it's not like they don't want to buy a ticket. They want to, but they need you to help them prepare. That's the whole idea and the whole mentality
That's
I've been
great.
using from my hip hop career to do stand up.
That's like a psychological hack, dude. Like you're getting them to spend more anyway. That's like trying to like
Punji-
convince a girl to sleep with you by like by making out with her and being like, she's like, well, I already made out with him, so I might as well fuck him.
I did
You
not.
said it, not me, Serty. He
That
did
is
it.
a stretch, Vishal.
That's what I heard, dude.
Oh man, Vishal
Punji,
is
on a
on
scale of
this.
1 to 10, how much did you like agree with that? As like where you're like, yeah, that represented what I was trying to say.
Well, it's oversimplification, but it's a nutshell.
You're right, dude. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not trying to.
And that's
cancel
the clip,
Pandji.
Vishal. That's the clip. I'm sorry.
I'm not trying to cancel Pandji, dude.
No, Pandji, I had a question, man. So, on the 9 specials you said you did in Indonesia, what was your distribution like for that? You worked with a third party, I imagine, for that many specials, right? You didn't do it indie.
No, actually, I have a company in Indonesia. My company
Your
does
company,
it.
a production company.
The the one that you keep tagging.
Oh, Stand-Up Indo.
Stand-Up Indo.
No, that's the community. So
Okay.
there's a community. Indonesia is very interesting. The comedy scene in Indonesia is unlike any other, I think. So all of the stand-up comedians in Indonesia is affiliated through this community-based organization, which is called Standup Indo. And there's always
Okay.
stand-up Indo in every city. So stand-up Indo Jakarta, stand-up Indo Bali, stand-up Indo. Every city has stand-up Indo.
Stand-Up
And
Indo
so
NYC.
And so when an Indonesian is in New York City, I have to establish the community stand-up Indo NYC. So that's the organization. But I have a company. It's called Komika, Comika, Komika, which is a 360 stand-up comedy company. It's a management, but it's also a promoter, but it's also a digital platform.
That's nice.
And it's also a stand-up comedy media, and it's also a stand-up comedy educational center. And I make this company to help push the industry. There's no such thing as a stand-up comedy industry just yet, because we're very young and there's not a lot of money involved in it yet. And so I make this company to help push it forward. And so my company runs my show,
Wow.
runs my tour.
Wow.
Well,
So
I'm
and I have
surprised
that's so
that
interesting that you
Komika-
guys do all in-house, huh?
Yeah, I'm surprised that the FTC has not broken Komika up for being a monopoly. Like,
yeah, I've always I keep saying, so there are other companies that are similar with Komika, but a lot of people think that we're competing against each other. But in actuality, I pray they succeed as well, because I know Komika cannot be the only one doing this, because it's not going to work if Komika is the only one doing this. It's a huge country. We can't do this by ourselves. But I've been trying to. One of the main focus in Komika is creating new comics. That's why we have a school, stand-up comedy school, and it's not like real school because it has more stand-up in it. Like you do more open mics to become a better comic.
yeah.
But that's one of the things that we have to focus on, because there's only one comedy club. There is 280 million, 280 million people, 18,000 island, one comedy club.
Wow.
And it's only because there's not enough comics to fill in the shows, you know what I'm saying? And it's only in Jakarta. And so that's why I built the company, and the company have been, organizing my shows and my tours and other comedians.
That is
under
so
the
great.
management.
What do you
Punji-
think?
No, sorry, Vishal.
What do you think would be easier, trying to for us trying to become a famous comedian in the U.S. or learn Indonesian and go to Indonesia and become a famous?
That's what I was thinking. There's no
There's a
competition.
vacuum there. Yeah.
Yeah, like create a comedy. What do you call it? A venue in Bali,
Yeah,
and
we'll
then just do
come.
English comedy for all the tourists. That's a
Let me
life.
tell you what. If you guys move to Indonesia, just using English, you will be you'd be surprised how I won't say easy,
Mm.
but I would say you'd be surprised of how your career would move forward exponentially, because there's so much thirst of stand
Mm.
up, and there's not a lot of stand up comedians. There's not, and also there's not a lot of enterprises
Yeah.
in stand up comedy. And so
There's a
that's
one-way
what I
ticket for $450 in 3 days,
Wow.
Oh my
guys.
God, bro.
Korean Air and Delta, one stop.
Okay, saying the opposite of what Serbi and Vishal are saying, Panji, have you considered, I mean, I could probably help you out with getting some of the venues, especially on the West Coast, but if you wanted to throw together like a sort of US tour, and you can do it in English or in Indonesian, since you can already draw, maybe, as soon as you get like 45 together or something, or even with 20, you could, riff or do crowd work for the rest. But if you did want to do something like that, have you considered that in the US?
Yeah, but I did consider that, but then something happened to me in Boston.
Oh no.
So I had a gig.
Racism always happens in Boston.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. So I had a gig in Boston where I had to perform in English.
Yeah.
And I had to do a 15-minute set, and so I brought my 15-minute solid that I told you previously.
That's why you go to the other places.
Yeah, but then I realized a lot of my jokes are targeted to New York audience, and it didn't relate to Boston.
Yep.
Like, I don't know if you know this. I have this bit about New York pizza, about how New Yorkers are so specific about their pizza. You're not allowed to microwave your pizza. I did that joke in New York, and then it didn't work because I did that in Boston and it didn't work. And then people in Boston, they eat lobster roll or something.
Yeah.
It's different. It's different. Even towards the Indonesian people in Boston. I have this joke where in New York you won't find Indonesian because they're all undocumented. I did that joke in Boston. It didn't work because they're all students there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so then I realized a lot of my jokes might not work if I bring it other places. So I still need to develop more jokes.
Okay.
I have to develop an act, and so that it would be relatable in LA and Philly and Seattle and so on.
But that's
so
part of the reason you go to those places. Like touring like that helps you develop that material.
You are right. Yeah, you're right. That's probably so. I have to, swallow the bitter pill, so to say.
No, I don't know. It's hard for you, and I don't want to make it be like, why aren't you doing this? Because you have a wife and kids here. Why would you leave them, especially when you dragged them to this country? Like, I completely understand why there's a little bit of a disconnect there, but
Why it's like you drag them kicking and screaming.
okay, I'm sorry that I said it like that. I apologize.
But Panji, you're in luck because we have a little segment where we want to try to take one of, like, as a group, work together, take one of your jokes that worked in Indonesia and doesn't work in New York, and see if we can all work together and try to make it work in New York.
Okay.
What's your closer for the 9th Indonesian special?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow, this is a very interesting way. So the my closer is actually, it should work, but I've never tried it. My closer is actually about texting with the kids.
Mm-hmm. That's universal.
And
Yeah.
And in Indonesia we mostly use WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Where I know it, but it's not really a thing here in the U.S.
No, that's not true. I love to text Indian girls. I love to do that. Just kidding.
Yeah, and so the joke starts off of me having a lot of WhatsApp stickers. You know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of them has dicks in it. The stickers has dicks in it. Like in Indonesia, in Indonesia, when we say okay, we say sip.
Okay.
Sip. Sip is the okay for Indonesian. And sip, there's a lot of stickers that has, so it's SIP, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of my stickers, the I is a dick. And so an S, the dick, and a P. And so I have a lot of stickers like that. And so the joke is, I'm texting my kids, and then because one of them pissed me off, I replied with that sticker, with that sip sticker.
So like a fuck
And-
you instead of an okay. It's like okay.
because she was texting me, and then my daughter, I love her so much because she's my princess, and then she said, what time are you going to go home? And I thought she misses me. I was like, oh, I'm working, baby. I'm gonna be home late. Just go to sleep, and I'll see you in the morning. Why? And then she said, yeah, I want to borrow your laptop. I want to watch Netflix. I was like, fuck, I thought you missed me. You just want to use my laptop. And so I replied to her with that sticker, the sip sticker. And that's the closing bit. I never tried it because it's so hard to make people understand of WhatsApp.
Yeah,
and
then like
stickers.
WhatsApp stickers. The closest
yeah.
you would have that I think everyone would get you'd have to go iMessage and emojis, because we don't really use
Or
stickers.
you can do a GIF. You can do a GIF.
Yeah, GIF is good. GIF is good.
GIF is a GIF or is it GIF?
It's GIF.
It's GIF.
And maybe with the dick thing too, it like my mind it goes to like it's not a fuck you as much as it is like a weird sexual thing. Could you just replace it with like a middle finger? Is that a thing that would translate?
You know, you can even add, what sip means in English.
Oh yeah, but it's another thing to establish.
I know. No, that's true. But you're like, yeah, I sent this to my daughter, and some of her American friends saw that I sent her sip with like a penis and I don't know. Anyways.
Oh yeah. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like her teacher at school, she saw this. She's like, "What is this?" Like your dad's telling you to sip his penis.
Yeah.
and your daughter's like, no, that's our culture, bitch.
I was like, what is Indonesian people so crazily savage?
No,
that
not like
would work.
that. But I just mean,
Yeah.
I remember. I just remember now that sip means another thing in English.
yeah, I
When
love
it
that
has
because
Yeah.
when you say sip and the I is a dick, it's almost like saying suck my dick.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's efficient. It's efficient, dude. You're using 3 letters, say the same thing. Plus, it's almost like Sanskrit. It's written, right?
Yeah.
Like you see the penis as the I, like in Pixar, where it's
Right.
the
A picture's worth 1,000 words. A GIF is worth 1,000 dick requests.
It's like suck penis, and the penis is in the middle.
I've never thought of it that way. That would work. I think I'm gonna try it in the next open mic.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, it would work. It would work.
I'll try. I just wanna see what happens if I try it.
Yeah, why not?
Pandji, we just hit an hour on the recording, so no, time flew. I really had a good time listening to you and getting to ask you questions and talking with you. So I just want to say thank you so much for coming onto the podcast and speaking with all of us.
My pleasure, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My pleasure. It's been an honor.
Are there
Thank you
any
so much.
closing thoughts you have? Things you want to plug? Anything you want to say?
Yeah. Any shows in New York coming up you want to plug?
I'm not really sure. I don't have a lot of shows coming up, but it's easier for anybody to follow me at standupindo.nyc.
Okay.
It's easier
Nice.
because my name is just too much. But standupindo.nyc is if you want to know any future gigs, any information, it's going to be there. Standupindo.nyc.
Following
But
it right
thank you very
now.
much for having me because I do have a target. Last year I did 5 podcasts for New York comics, and I want to ramp up the numbers. So thank you for being the first one this year for me.
Woo! You should have your own
Oh.
podcast, Pandji. You can have Miss Indonesia.
What was that? Sorry, I didn't hear.
You get your own podcast. Have Miss Indonesia on.
Look at this fucking setup he has in his own house, and he's like, "Yeah, I
Yeah,
did
right.
5 podcasts. Come on, you got a
No, I mean,
studio."
for other comics, I want to be on.
Yeah, I get it. I
Other
get it.
comics.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
So, yeah, and last year I did 5. This year I wanted to try to be on 10 podcasts, and so you guys are
can
on the
do it.
first. So now I have 9 more to go this year.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
This was great. Thank you so much, Pandji, for being on episode 3, season 2 of First World Problematic.
Woo!
Woo!
Yeah. All right,
Good
let's
show,
stop
guys.
recording.
See you guys
Let's
next
stop
time.
recording.
I